Hello, Facebook friends and Love Coach Academy people. I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas, and wow, the world just keeps changing before our very eyes. And we've been bringing you these lives a couple times a day. We call it compassionate talk, because whatever it is we're talking about, we want to really be in our heart. And it's pretty easy to be in our heads these days. So many different belief systems and so many crazy things going on in the world. And every day we're getting these headlines and this news that's, well, most of the time pretty dire, pretty scary, at least here in the United States, where most of us are. Every day, the numbers rise, and most of the news is pretty bad, pretty scary. And there's a lot of belief systems flying around out there. Conspiracy theories, the UFOs are coming, we're going to lose the internet. And I'm not qualified to talk about any of that stuff. But what I am qualified to do, and I'm really happy to be sharing it, with me right now, I'm going to kind of go to gallery view for a moment, are 5 amazing coaches, all part of Love Coach Academy. Trish, Laura, Heidi, Mimi, and Candace from all over the country. We've got people from the East Coast, Hawaii, California. And I'm going to take us on a journey. And then we're going to hear from each of our love coaches about what took place for them on their journey. And then we're going to just open it up to each person providing tools for how to manage ourselves in these crazy times. So the focus today is really going to be on how to really be present to what's going on, but to shift our attention so we're not just falling down the rabbit hole. And I want to acknowledge probably all of us have done that. You know, you get on the internet and start going from one story to the next, or you start maybe really gathering evidence for a particular conspiracy theory, or you get really obsessed with how many people have gotten sick and how many people are dying. Or maybe it's stuff in your own world. You're getting really obsessed about your economic challenges and how it's impacting you financially. Or maybe you're going stir crazy, being stuck in your house. Maybe you're all alone and it's like, oh my God, I'm all alone and I can't even go out. Or maybe you're stuck in a house full of people you don't want to be with. 3 kids that ship them off to school and now they're back in your house. So whatever it is, we all have plenty of reasons to be going a little bit nuts. So today, it's all about recognizing it's okay if you're going nuts, but we're here to help you enjoy life more fully. And so here we go. I'm going to take you on a little trip. So unless you're operating a motor vehicle, and none of our love coaches are doing that right now, but for anybody who's watching this, whether you're watching the recording or if you're watching a watch party, I want to invite you to really drop in with me for a few minutes, okay? This is going to be a good journey for you. So let's just start by closing our eyes and taking some deep breaths. And really putting aside whatever we might have been doing or thinking about prior. And bringing our attention to ourself, to our body, our beautiful body temple. And just allow the sound of my voice to gently guide you as you inhale and exhale, primarily focusing on your breath. Our breath is life itself. Our life begins with breath. It ends with breath. Breath is life. And as we're slowing down and we're tuning in, what is your body telling you? What are you noticing? Do you notice any places where there might be a little physical discomfort? Do you notice any emotions, feelings that perhaps have been there, but you weren't so aware of. Physical sensations, emotional feelings. Just taking an inventory of how your body is doing, what your body's telling you. Because in this journey, it's all about you being present to you, not looking outside of yourself or anything. And as you tune into you, I want you to acknowledge any painful thought that has been running, especially if there's a painful thought that you've been obsessing about. Oh my God, am I going to go broke? Or a relationship pain, a fear pain. Will I get sick? Will my parents get sick? Will I or someone die that I care about? But pick just one painful thought that you've been running. And I invite you to run that painful thought through your mind. Even though it's going to be uncomfortable, go ahead and run it through your mind now, 5 or 6 times. And as you run that painful thought, notice if there's a place in your body where there's physical discomfort. Is there a place in your body that contracted or began to feel uncomfortable as you run this thought? Now, when you're ready, after you've kind of done an inventory of your body, what's going on, I invite you to open your eyes. And we're going to continue this practice for a while, but I want to just hear from each of our love coaches, just in a sentence. You don't have to tell us what the painful thought was, but if you felt discomfort in your body, and if so, where you felt it. And I'll just open it up. Yeah, Laura.
Yes, I felt it right in my solar plexus, and it kind of went into my chest.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Candace, did you feel any discomfort?
Yeah. Similarly, very sacral and solar centric, and a lot of contraction and pain. Both, I did feel it viscerally too. There was a physical as well as like this energetic element to it.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share whatever physical discomfort they might have felt? Heidi.
Yeah, in running the thought, my heart started to race and my throat closed up a little bit, and my breath got difficult to take a deep breath in, shortness of breath.
Yeah, okay. And we're going to stay with the practice. It's going to get better, I promise. Trish or Mimi, did either of you? Yeah, Mimi.
Mine was in my shoulder blades, so I was recognizing that from my heart space.
Okay, all right. And how about you, Trish? Did you feel any discomfort or notice anything?
Yeah, some tingly butterflies from about here to right in line with my lower ribs. So just like kind of like a pillar of tightness, and also this a common issue that I have is kind of like acting up as well in my shoulder blade and up into my neck. Kind of just like a tightness.
All right, so all of us felt, and by the way, I did it also. I picked a painful thought. I immediately felt this impulse to cry, which of course I couldn't because I was leading the meditation. But if I was just listening to it, I felt a well of tears and my heart hurt. So I'm going to give each of you and everybody watching out there in Facebook land a phrase. And you can write it down or just memorize it. It's pretty short. The phrase is, I'm telling myself the story that. I'm telling myself the story that. I'm telling myself the story that. And what we're all going to do is, in a moment, we're going to close our eyes again, and we're going to run that painful thought again 6 or 7 times. But this time you're going to add that phrase. I'm telling myself the story that she doesn't really love me. I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to have enough money. I'm going to get sick. My parents might die. Okay. Whatever that painful thought is, just put, I'm telling myself the story that in front of it. Okay. And so I want to invite all of us to close our eyes again. Take a couple breaths. When you're ready, the phrase, I'm telling myself the story that, whatever your thought is. And please, everybody watching, do this as well. I'm telling myself the story that. And as you do this painful thought, but now with the phrase at the beginning, notice how your body is responding, if it's different than the first time. And also notice if your relationship to the thought itself is different. Is your relationship to the thought itself different? And after you've done that and kind of done an inventory, I invite you all to gently open your eyes when you're ready, take your time, and come back into the room. And I'd love to hear from each of you if what your experience was this second time, and if you noticed a difference, either in your body or in your relationship to the thought, and what that difference was. You don't have to tell us what the painful thought was, unless you want to. You're certainly welcome to if you want to, but you don't need to. But what we do want to know is, was there a difference? And if there wasn't a difference, that's okay too. But I'd just like to hear from each of you what your experience was. Laura.
So what I noticed was when I told myself, I'm telling myself the story in front of it, I just felt like more of a spaciousness, and I could feel the relaxation in all the constricted areas that were in my body with the painful thought. So I just felt like a slight, like I could just, there was like space around it. So it felt like a, kind of like a soothing blanket, like this guy.
Beautiful. Okay. How about you, Candace? What happened for you the second time?
It shifted into this, it's like the story kind of, so basically, you know, my story is that I'm fucked, I'm broken, I'm never gonna figure out this blind thing. But basically it was the story started that, you know, I'm blind and I'm never gonna figure this out and I'm depressed and I'll never overcome this. But after putting the story in front of it, all of a sudden I just got like this overwhelming, like, I don't know how to explain it, because it was like this breakthrough in the story of like, holy shit, Candace, like what's wrong with you right now? What do you mean? Like, and then like just realizing that the story that behind all this is that there's something wrong with where I'm at right now, you know, and just not loving myself and not liking myself. And so I'm still kind of processing a lot of what I just felt and saw.
Yeah. So I'm hearing it almost like you saw the bigger picture. You pulled up and saw it from a bigger point of view. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, versus there's the realistic tangible story. I went blind, you know,
Right.
and then what is my emotional story, that what's happened for me within that, because it's not everyone else's experience that goes blind,
Right.
and this is what I've created out of this.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing vulnerably. And we've got to Twinkle Laura, so we're twinkling Laura and Candace. And we'll come back and work with you a little bit more. We'll come back and work with all of you a little bit, but especially with you, Candace. Trish, what was your experience?
I felt it kind of shift and pull down. It went really like this tingle butterfly feeling dropped down into my like lower body, and the shoulder pain dropped into my elbow. It just to say that I had an experience, and in the last few days I'm having an experience like Candace is having. It's like the deeper self-love and acceptance piece is the story that I'm telling myself is mind to separate from the pain. The story that I'm telling myself is allows my mind to separate from the pain of it and the pressure, and gives me an opportunity to acknowledge that it's just the software running, whatever it's downloaded, that it's just software and I can update it.
Beautiful. Okay, that's a good example. Thank you. Well, Twinkle, Trish, Heidi, and then Mimi.
There I am. So my painful thought that's kind of been a little theme for me the last couple years is this feeling, or my thought was, I don't know what the divine wants me to do. And as a result of that, I get a little paralyzed. And so I'm telling myself the story, that it almost kind of made me laugh. Like, yeah, I'm making up that story. I know what to do. And when we did putting that in front of this, or putting the story in front of that, my shoulders relaxed, my breathing slowed down, and there was just a sense of comfort. And it just minimized it a lot. Like I could chuckle at it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. And Mimi, what was your experience the second time around?
It was interesting because I really didn't have a story to begin with. I didn't have like a story to attach it to. I just noticed it within my body. And the minute that I started out with, I am telling myself a story, that all kinds of wonderful stories showed up for me. And it started to like, the muscles relaxed around my shoulder blades. So it's really beautiful. Just to yawn and stretch and just recognize it instead of have like a lot of, instead of stay within story. So that was a great practice. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, thank you. So for anybody watching at home, just want to say that again, most of the time, and I've been leading this practice for many, many years. I've done it for thousands of people. Most of the time when we add, I'm telling myself the story, that it does change our neurological pathway of our brain. And we go from reptile brain into our frontal lobe. And so that's why most people, just by adding, I'm telling myself the story, that it actually shifts us out of being in reaction to our own painful thought, right? Because most of the time, remember that our reptile brain is triggered by the possibility of attack. And our own painful thoughts can actually trigger our own reptile brain. So that's why very often we're living in a constant state of discomfort just because we're running painful thoughts. Now, I want to acknowledge those of you who, because you had a hard childhood or you might have a PTSD thing going on, have kind of learned to live in a state of hypervigilance. And we all have to have compassion for people that live in a state of hypervigilance and not call them being neurotic or unnecessarily crazy, which is what I've observed some people saying. We have to have compassion for all of us, right? So always lead with compassion, always leading with empathy. But what we do want to start doing is noticing, when am I obsessing? When am I running the same painful thought over and over and over, which is keeping me in a heightened state of anxiety, in a heightened state of worry, in a heightened state of fear? First step, I'm telling myself the story that's the first step. But now, because I'm working with a group of advanced love coaches, we're going to take it a step further. I want each of you, again, you don't have to tell us what the story is unless you want to, like Heidi did, but you don't have to. But what is the predominant uncomfortable feeling that's associated when you run that story? And what are the predominant universal human needs or values that are threatened or challenged by that story? So, for example, if your story is, my lover's going to leave me, your need, your value, your beautiful longing of the heart for intimacy, sexual expression, romance is being threatened. If you're worried about your financial situation, your security, your stability is being threatened, okay? And so I want to invite everybody just to give some thought to what are the universal human needs or longings that are being threatened by the painful thought you've been running. And I'm going to actually bring up the Love Coach Academy list of universal human needs that people can look at. And let me make it a little bit larger. There we go. And I'm going to bring it up even for people watching this online. Here it is. Are you guys able to see that okay, love coaches? So this is, the universal, we call these universal human needs. You can also call them longings of the heart, desires, values. And what's in the large, whoops, I made it a little bit too large there. If it's in bold, that's kind of a category. And for those at home who can't see this, I'll just read some of the major categories are security, sustenance, freedom, leisure, relaxation, connection, meaning, to matter, understanding, transcendence, community. We've kind of identified 6 of the big needs, 6 of the ones that are most often what's up for us, and that's connection, safety, respect, appreciation, to be seen clearly, and to be understood. Those tend to be the big ones. I would also say inclusion is also very significant. So again, just giving everybody at home and our love coaches a chance to get in touch with, in your painful thought, which of these words are threatened or challenged, or which of these beautiful experiences that we love to have are not going to take place if your painful thought or story is true. And while people are looking at that, I want to mention one other thing. Sometimes people say, well, no, wait a minute. You know, my painful thought is I lost my job, and I really did lose my job. It's not just a story. When we say it's a story, it doesn't mean it's a fictional story, but it means that it's become an ongoing story that we're running through our head, right? So even if it's a fact you lost your job, if you're running it through your head over and over and over, it's becoming a story, and we never want our story to be running us, right? We want to be in control of the story. We don't want the story to be running us. Okay. So I'm going to close the screen, and I'm going to ask each of our love coaches to share pick one, two, at the very most three of these universal human needs that are threatened or challenged. And then what are the uncomfortable feelings or feeling that's associated with that for you? And you can go in any order, Laura, and then Heidi.
So I was going to ask you for a little help with this, Scott, because sometimes it's hard to figure out, you know, like, so what if this thing happens, I feel like I will not have, well, I think mutuality is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So mutuality means like both people are, can you help me with that?
Yeah, mutuality, it's interesting. Almost every couple that I work with that are really challenged,
Yeah.
especially long-term couples,
Yeah.
both people usually are at the place where they feel the relationship's not balanced. It's not fair. I'm giving more than I'm getting back. And that's a problem of mutuality.
Yeah.
We want to feel like the other person's as in love with us as we're in love with them. The other person cares as much about us as we care about them. And this is especially true in romantic relationships. And as they go by, we start fearing that we're more into it or we're giving more than the other one is. And when that is the story going on, the unmet need is mutuality.
Oh, okay. So then that's my unmet need.
Okay, your unmet need is mutuality. Thank you. And
It's making me feel sad that I'm going to have a loss of connection.
yeah, so you're longing, so you're feeling sad because you're afraid that there's not enough mutuality and you're going to lose connection.
Yeah, and mostly because I feel resentful.
Aha, right. Resentment is the symptom.
Yeah.
Right? Resentment is a symptom
Yeah.
pointing to discomfort, pointing to, oh, I'm feeling resentful because my need for mutuality isn't being met.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting us kind of, unpack
because I
that.
think sometimes we need guidance. And now I also don't know how to talk to this person because I feel afraid because I don't want to cause a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
Good job, Laura. Thank you. Twinkling Laura, thank you. Heidi, and then I'll call in Candace.
The highest one is security, that I'm longing for, and then also understanding and meaning. When I read the words underneath that, those two really show up as well.
Yeah. And when your value for security, understanding, and meaning isn't met, what feelings do you experience?
The first word that comes is lost, right? I don't know if that's a feeling. So of course there's fear and anxiety. What's a good word for feeling lost? That's the
Confused.
confused and fearful.
Yeah, confused. Sometimes also overwhelmed. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed, confused when we're lost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even paralyzed. Sometimes we feel paralyzed.
That's
when we're
the
lost.
word, paralyzed.
Paralyzed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Candace.
Yeah, so I have one of those stories like you're saying, lost your job thing. Like, yeah, I did lose my vision, but so I can't see the list, but as I'm listening to it, there's a lot of those. I mean, every one of the needs I say, I mean, whether it's my independence, community, meaning, um, a lot of my needs I'm spinning as to how I can get them met on my own or get support. Um, so yeah, if this story is true, I'm there's a lot of fear, a lot of
Yeah.
fear. Like right now, like am I ever, do I feel safe living alone? Am I okay with my mom moving out? Can I do this? Like there's,
Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah.
So thank you so much. And again, let's twinkle in just a lot of empathy for everybody, because right now we're in the dealing with the hard part of it. We're going to transform this. This is a process. Like
Mhm.
life, it's a process. But just really taking the time to acknowledge the very real discomfort of fear as your value for safety, uh, and just being taken care of and having your needs met, and the
Yeah,
fear that your needs are not going to be met. What happens when mom mows out? What happens as I'm learning how to be living in life as a blind person? And it's always important for us to remember that our uncomfortable feelings are real in the moment, even if they're being triggered by an inaccurate story or a story that we're running. The discomfort is real, and we always want to have empathy for the person's discomfort, okay? And not jump too quickly to solution fixing or spiritual bypassing. Trish and then Mimi.
Um, so what needs aren't being met is the feeling to matter, that I matter and that I belong and that I'm appreciated. Um, I think being in isolation is really, well, not isolation specifically, but being in quarantine and not being able to connect is really hard. It's, like the Zoom meetings and those things are really beautiful. They're just the warmth. There's a warmth there. There's a longing there. So it's like, do I matter? Can I belong to this larger community? And am I appreciated? And most of the stories that I run fall into a larger category of story. And the kind of a familial story. I'm not enough and I'm alone.
Often you've heard me say it, everybody, we're mammals and we need homeostasis. We need physical connection, we need physical touch, and we need to be acknowledged. We need to be appreciated. We need to feel like we matter. And so, again, very primal. And thank you, Trish, for sharing that. And I think certainly a lot of people right now in social isolation are experiencing that. I can relate to that. And it kind of dovetails what Trish just shared, can also dovetail into what Candace shared. Almost all of our greatest pain comes from the fear of being alone. Fear of being alone is about the most painful terror in our life. And I don't want to go off on this too much, but it's because we live in this world where we're in the illusion, right? We're in this perception that I'm just this separate human being and I'm separate. If we're fortunate and we have certain spiritual experiences or a certain faith or practice that helps us to feel connected to nature, connected to life, connected to whatever you want to call it, higher self or God or life, just the planet. When we're feeling connected, we fundamentally feel safe. When we're feeling separate and in the illusion of separation, we feel isolated, we feel alone, and we feel scared, right? So it's Mimi. What came up for you?
Oh my goodness, this is so. I wrote it all down so that I could like process it. The abandonment story and the isolation story. So I feel like I have. I'm hoping that this is like the top layer of, if I had to top layer this, that the whole world would be an isolation and abandonment story. That would be, way to unify the world. So I'm really grateful to be here with all of you sharing this experience.
And what do you feel when you're in the isolation abandonment story? What are your feelings?
Fear is a really big one. And the feelings within my body. So the core emotion there is fear, and then the feelings that get activated in the body are they're like that active panic.
Mm-hmm.
So the going from not being able to sleep to sleeping a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rapid, like wanting to get through everything really rapidly.
Right.
And then dropping into breath, like
Mm-hmm.
slowing down, breathing. So recognizing it in my body, recognizing the core emotion, and being.
Okay. That's such a good. Thank you. Let's twinkle. I forget if we twinkle church too. I apologize. I've been lax on my twinkling today. So now we're going to take the next step in this practice. You've each gotten in touch significant longings of your heart or values that are being threatened or challenged. And you've gotten in touch with the feeling associated with that. Once again, I want us to close our eyes and really pick one of those values, one of those longings that you are longing for, that you're afraid you're losing. Mutuality, connection, right? One of the things you're really longing for, that you're afraid you're losing. Appreciation, acknowledgement, to matter. Pick one and really focus just on that. How important it is for you to feel connected. How important it is for you to matter. How important mutuality is. How important safety is. Whatever yours is, pick one and just really acknowledge how beautiful, how valuable, how important that precious need, value, longing of the heart is. And as you're focusing on what I'm going to call the beauty of that value, the beauty of that need, once again, notice, is there a place in your body that corresponds? Is there a place in your body that corresponds to your connection to the beauty of that value, beauty of that need? And just notice if there's a place or places in your body that connect to that. And now, I want you to remember a time when that value was met. For Laura, when you did experience mutuality. For Candace, when you did feel safe. And so on and so forth for each of you. What's a time in your life when that was met. And I want you to really remember that time in your life. And try to remember it to the depth that you can feel that in your body, the somatic memory of what it feels like. Literally sipping it like you're sipping a beautiful drink. Sip the memory of the beauty of that longing being met. And perhaps even sip from the place in your body that you noticed is associated with that longing. For me, the longing that I had when it has been met, my heart is so full, and I'm sipping that memory from my precious, beautiful heart right now. For others, especially if it's safety, might be your power center. Mutuality might be your heart, it might even be your throat, your communication center. Remembering the beauty of that need, that value, that precious longing of the heart. Remembering when it's been met and fulfilled. Being grateful for that experience that you had. Absolute gratitude and appreciation. It feels so good when I'm understood. It feels so good when there's mutuality. I love feeling safe and cozy. I so appreciate when I'm understood, or when I'm connected. It feels so good when I'm physically being held. Whatever it might be, remembering that. And just absorbing that memory in gratitude. And if there's any part of you, if there's any little gremlins poking at you, stopping you from remembering it, because that sometimes happens. Hopefully not, but if it's happening, that's okay, and we'll talk about it later. And that's the same for anybody watching. If there's little gremlins poking at you, trying to get in the way of remembering this, we'll talk about what that's all about later. And for my love coaches, once you feel like you've kind of really had an experience of gratitude, remembering, perhaps connecting it to your body, you can open your eyes and slowly come back into the room. So I'd love to hear honestly from each of your experience. And I'm going to kind of go in order whose eyes opened. So Trish, your eyes opened just before Mimi's. So we'll go Trish and then Mimi, then Heidi, then Laura, then Candace.
Oh, it feels so good to sit with and to bathe myself in the feelings of the things that I want the most, the things that I long for: belonging, appreciation, love, and gratitude.
Was there a particular place in your body that you were able to kind of sip it through that you had noticed?
The shoulder, arm, piece right there. That's
Yeah.
as well. Not so tight.
Nice, nice. And I'm sorry to have brought you out of it. It seems like you were kind of in that experience. It felt yummy, huh?
I'm not out of it.
Oh, good. Stay there. Simmer in the soup.
Rolling boil.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Trish is cooking away. Mimi, what came up for you?
I went for isolation, where was the place that I was the most isolated and the most cared for. And so when I was on tour in Italy, I dove into the Mediterranean and these fish were swimming all around me. It was the first day I found that I was pregnant. And I was so alone, but so cared for in complete isolation. And that just filled my body, the Mediterranean.
What a wonderful memory. That's a beautiful memory. Well, thank you. Yeah, nice. Twinkling, twinkling to Trish and Mimi. I think we're going Heidi, then Laura, then Candace.
So it was easy to find the spot, which was nice. I was surprised by that. And the feelings were creativity and inspiration and successful. Yeah.
Mhm. And did you have a particular memory that helped you to anchor into that?
Yeah, when I lived in Sausalito, I had a beautiful 2-story kind of warehouse building, and I used it for work and live. And it was, home is important to me and how I feel in my surroundings. And it was decorated beautifully, and it was so the ceilings were 2-story high. It was an old firehouse, so I had windows all the way up where you can imagine fire trucks drive in, and that. That height just gave me this expansiveness of being unstoppable. And then the best part, so it was surrounded in beauty. And then it was a time that I was living alone with my 2 daughters, and they hadn't hit their teenage challenges yet. And we used to laugh all the time. We used to throw the mattress from the loft down on the floor, and the girls would jump off the staircase onto the mattress, and just a lot of silly fun in
Oh,
that time with
God.
my. I am bring tears to my eyes right now.
Mm,
And I miss them so much. It's not painful.
mm,
It's a happy memory, but I really miss
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Heidi. You know, what Heidi's just right now demonstrating for us is that beautiful experience of, I call it bittersweet. It's bitter that you miss your girls, but it's sweet because you love them so much. And it's the love, that incredible love that you have for them, that's so sweet, that makes it bitter that you're missing them. You know, I really love using the bittersweet experience and perception for when we're missing someone that we love. I have that with my wife, who died 8 years ago. It's so sweet that I still miss her so much. It's bitter that she's gone, but I'm glad that I still miss her so much because it helps her to remember the love. Yeah. Thank you, Heidi. Beautiful. Laura, what was your, oh, twinkling, of course. My gosh, I'm just blowing out of twinkling. Laura, what was up for you today?
Oh,
Just
wow.
know.
So thank you so much for this, Scott. I feel so relaxed right now. But I was imagining, feeling safe with another individual who met my need for mutuality and contribution. And, I even brought some of that back into my childhood and the safety of, always feeling like I had to give more to feel safe. And with this one other human being in my life, I felt like I haven't had to over give or anything, just to feel safe and accepted and be a part of that relationship. And it's not a familiar place for me all the time. I kind of over give, over care, and I understand that it's more about, it's really coming from inside of me. Like, it's a way that I've developed a neural pathway to feel like I'm going to be okay. And with this one other human being, they've shown me that, I don't always have to do much more to keep adding to myself or to add to my safety, you know. And so you reminded me of that, and I was able to drop in, and I could feel my whole body relax and just it was really nice.
Beautiful. Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Thank you. And finally, Candace, I'm really eager to hear what your experience was.
I had a lot of gremlins. I'm not, I didn't have a positive experience. Like it's not hard for me to think of memories and times when I had these needs met. It's hard to think of that time, I think. So I don't know, I feel like the story seems so real, you know, as I haven't experienced this stuff in a couple of years now. So
Yeah. So I want to work with you for a moment, Candace. And also, I now want to invite our other love coaches to work with Candace a little bit too. I kind of had a feeling, it's interesting, I kind of intuitively got that you might have had gremlins going on, Candace. So that's why I kind of chose to talk to you last. And so for you, Candace, and for anybody at home watching this who had gremlins, so what is that? What are those mental gremlins that poke at us that as we're doing a practice like this will say to us like, this is bullshit, or this isn't going to work, or, you know, whatever it might be. Those gremlins are what I call disembodied voices inside of us. Sometimes they originate with an authority figure that told us something that stuck inside of our brain. Other times it's parts of ourself that have really become, they think they're protecting us. It's like if you have a dog that barks at anybody, right? And the dog thinks it's doing its job. The dog thinks it's protecting you. But actually, it's just obnoxious because the dog is barking at anybody and everything, which is just barking, right? So often when we have a gremlin inside of us, it's because we've experienced so much pain as it relates to that particular issue that the gremlin is like, okay, well, this is the way it is, and you just got to deal with it. You got to live with this. This is the way it's always going to be, right? A common example is if we've been hurt in love, right? And we make that holy vow, I will never love another man. I will never trust another woman. I will never love again. Whatever we make that holy vow when we're in our pain, oh, there's a sub-personality, a gremlin that says, okay, I'm going to remind you of that. 6 months later, a year later, whatever it is, we meet somebody new, we begin to have romantic feelings, and that gremlin comes in and will either point out what's wrong with us or what's wrong with the other person, because that gremlin's job is to make sure we never fall in love again. We never open our heart again. We never trust again, right? So the gremlin can come from inside of us or an authority figure. That the mother who said, you can never trust a man, you know, the father that said, you'll never do, you're not smart enough, you'll never be good enough, you know. So it might be an authority figure that we've given our power away to, or a part of ourself that's trying to protect us. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. And the key is just to recognize it's just a voice that's in there. It's not reality. And it's not something to give our power away to. But what we do want to do is understand, where did that voice come from? And can I give that voice a new job, or can I ask it to leave? We're going to get back to you in a moment, Candace, but I want to give one more example. There's a woman I worked with, actually it was a couple, and one of their issues was the boyfriend was really frustrated because whenever he'd tell his girlfriend, "You're so beautiful," she said, "No, I'm not. I know I'm ugly. I know I'm ugly." And in fact, she was actually a beautiful woman inside and out. But she had this story, really big story. She was ugly. She had a real big gremlin, "You're ugly." So we did some light hypnotherapy, really going into where is that voice coming from? And all of a sudden she remembered, and this woman was in her late 30s. She remembered being a little girl on the playground, around 6 or 7 years old. And there was this freckle-faced, red-haired boy saying, "You're ugly. Do you know how ugly you are? You're ugly." Now, we just look at it, well, it's just like a 9 or 10-year-old kid who's being a brat. But for her, he was an authority figure because he was an older boy telling her what she looked like. And for all these decades, she was carrying that little bugger inside her brain and collecting evidence to support the very fictitious story that she was ugly, right? So all it takes is an authority figure once telling us something. "What's wrong with you? You just can't do math. You throw the ball like a girl," and our arm contracts.
Hey Google, what time is it?
We have a Mensa brain, and yet we may all of a sudden freeze up when it comes to doing math or throwing the baseball or looking in the mirror, right? Does it make sense to everybody? So before we kind of wrap up with Candace, and I know we need to wrap up soon, I just want to repeat the steps of this process. And because all of you are brilliant love coaches, I'm hoping you're going to take this process and share it with some of your clients or some of your friends, okay? So I want to review the steps. Step number 1, what's a painful thought we've been running through our mind, maybe even obsessively? So step number 1, what's the painful thought? Close your eyes, run the painful thought. Notice, where in my body is there discomfort? Then, second step, add the phrase, "I'm telling myself the story that," and then you go into the painful thought. And you process that a few times. "I'm telling myself the story that." And how does your body change? How does your body respond differently? How do you see the thought differently? Ideally, we move from reptile brain reactivity into frontal lobe, observing the thought and having empathy for ourselves. Oh. And we have empathy because there's a precious need or needs, a precious value that isn't being met by that thought or that experience. We then really get in touch with what's the beautiful longing of our heart that's being threatened or challenged or not being met by our remembering the experience or our fear, our pain, right? Whatever that painful thought is connected to an unmet need, an unmet longing of the heart. We really focus on the longing of that heart. And does it reside in a particular place in our body? And then we remember a time when that precious longing was beautifully met, when we were understood, when we did have mutuality, when we did feel safe, when we did feel connected. And we fill our body, and especially if there's a place in the body, the heart or the solar plexus, we fill that place in our body with the memory and the gratitude. And if there's mental gremlins getting in the way, then we realize, okay, I've got to get in touch. And maybe this is where working with a coach is really helpful. Maybe I need to work with a coach or a friend to really get in touch with, where do those gremlins come from? Where do those gremlins come from? Yeah. So, yeah, Laura.
I just want to offer one thing that I talked about yesterday in the class with Debbie. There is a way to get in touch with that, and it's a kind of a subconscious thing, right? Like you said, hypnosis. So you can just take a sheet of paper, set a timer for 4 minutes, and you write I can't talk to this part. I can talk to my partner openly, and then let's say that's an example of where you're blocked, or I'm not beautiful, or no, I am beautiful, and then right underneath, right, no, I'm not, because set the timer for 4 minutes and let whatever comes out of your subconscious mind just free flow, and you will find so many hidden treasures of stories that are there come out onto the paper for 4 minutes. Just don't stop writing, free flow. And it's so helpful to really know what's underneath, and, to kind of figure out. And if you do it, a few times, you'll just see things. You're like, wow, I had no idea that was what was going underneath. So I wanted to offer that.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's a great tool. That's a great tool. Candace, what I'd like to do is work with you privately. Because I know that some of us need to wrap up in a couple minutes, including myself, actually. But I'm going to immediately, as soon as we hang up, Candace, I'm going to send you a message with some times that I'm available, and let's schedule time to work on together. Okay. And any last thoughts, any last parting thoughts from any of our love coaches about this process? Yeah, Mimi.
I just wanted to add a couple of pieces. One is if you bring in music, if it's like a major amount of trauma, if you bring in lighter music, it can help the brain to not overload the system. And second, yawning and stretching as often as possible through the process, which also helps to break that up chemically in the brain.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Mimi. Thank you. That's right. I've got my chimes automatically going. Any other thoughts?
I love how simple this practice is. That the simplicity of the 3.5 steps, running the painful thought, sharing, I'm telling myself the story of the painful thought, remembering a time when I had this need met, this really big need was filled, and to fill my body with gratitude for that memory. I think that it's really easy for anybody at home and for love coaches and for everybody to just really appreciate oneself in that, and give yourself the opportunity for 4 steps. Just allow yourself the 5 minutes that it would take, 5 to 7 minutes that this would take.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And as you're saying that, Trish, I'm really glad you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And try it with your friends. And there's one thought that came to my mind. Sometimes people aren't ready to go to the gratitude or remembering when the need was met until they've gotten a certain amount of empathy. And so it sometimes, especially as a coach, if we're leading somebody, sometimes what gets them stuck is they still need to be understood and get empathy for the unmet need. So let's say if I was working with, I'll just pick Laura. Maybe Laura really needs to be understood for how she's got this resentment that's growing about her mutuality not being met. And I might need to give her, as a coach, some pretty good quality empathy for that before she'll be ready to go into remembering when her need for mutuality was met. Okay, so that's just something as coaches to remember, is that sometimes it will take a little bit longer if the person we're working with really needs their pain to be understood. Because some people like Debbie Garcia, straight to gratitude, okay? Right, boom, like, Speedy Gonzalez. But other people need for their pain to be acknowledged first before they can go there. So just as coaches, something to remember. Heidi.
I know we need to wrap up. I just want to add quickly that something I work with is trauma. And if you've had past trauma and this thought particularly activates it, it's what you're talking about too, the stuck point. And sometimes we can't do it in the brain. We have to do it in the body. So very briefly, I just would invite anyone, once you're in touch with the negative feeling and the body part that is affected by it, that you can stand and just do some movement, acknowledging those two things. And our body is extremely intelligent and knows how to unwind that. And then we can move into the next part. It's called an energy constriction, but with trauma that often happens.
Thank you so much. That's right. We need sound and movement to release it. So it could be doing jumping jacks or just getting on the bed and allowing your body to shake and shiver and dance and quiver and whatever weird sounds come out. It's okay to look like you're possessed by the that you need an exorcism, whatever it takes, you're right. Absolutely. To move that trauma. So thank you for bringing that up, Heidi. That's really important. All right. What a lucky guy I am. I get to spend my morning with these amazingly beautiful women inside and out. So thank you, ladies. I really enjoyed being with you. And please try this with your friends. Let me know how it goes, okay? With your friends or with your clients. And I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas, reminding everybody to join us most of the time, 9 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the evening for compassionate talk. And hopefully we will see all of you again soon. Take care, everybody. Namaste.